And I'm talking about Boris. Not Boris the bumbler, not stab in the back Boris, not Boris the backseat driver, but Boris the magnificent, who in a 4,000-word, fantastically upbeat essay delivered his gloriously positive vision of Brexit. It was only a few weeks ago the euphoria of the last summer's Brexit revolution looked like it was in ruins, quashed by the grey men in government and Whitehall. But thanks to Boris and his rip-roaring confidence in Britain, the dream is back on the cards. And it was joyous for Leavers and Remainers alike, who are sick of hearing our incredible country talked down by scared little government bods who talk about Britain like it's some helpless banana republic that can't look after itself. Well, swashbuckling Boris said balls to that. He insisted Britain can and will prosper. And he says we should tell the EU to stuff it if they demand a multi-million-pound divorce bill. And I agree with him, 100%. Boris helped deliver Brexit, but Mrs May cut him out of the most important challenge this country has faced in decades and left the exit process in the hands of a bunch of ineffectual ninnies who, when Barnier and co. say jump, say how high.
This is so amazing, Carole, that you have this wonderful faith in Boris.
In Britain.
Well, and in Britain. We all have faith in Britain. Look at this great Office of State. This great Office of State, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, broken up into the Department of Brexit, Department of International Trade, and the Foreign Office. And you've got these three Brexiteers, and their motto is all for one and none for all.
Exactly.
And it's all disintegrating in front of us. He has the goal to write this piece, 4,200 words, and implying that everything has been wrong with Britain, and on the one hand saying Britain is a great country and Britain's only going to be great if we leave the European Union. What is the reality? He brings up that £350 million figure again. Even Nigel Farage distanced himself from that. The head of the Statistics Authority immediately, unprompted, said, what is he doing bringing this up? This is misleading. The actual amount we give to the European Union is half that figure. It's about £8 billion a year net that we give. Do you know that's 1% of our annual government expenditure per year? 1% of our annual government expenditure per year. I would pay that 1% for the peace that we've had over the last few decades in the European Union. And saving the National Health Service, a budget approaching £120 billion, it's not going to save the National Health Service. Now, here's the other thing. What really annoyed me about his piece was, forget the fact he was trying to scupper Theresa May, but it was implying, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, his sidekick, pipes up saying managing decline, manage decline. No one's talking manage decline. This country was the fifth largest economy in the world. This country is the best of the best in every area you can imagine. Well before Brexit, regardless of Brexit. And by the way, who's had the highest cumulative GDP growth rate of the original EU countries since the EU was formed? Not Germany at 35%, Britain at 62%. We've done really well out of it. And Boris, by the way, is whistling in the wind.
So I've let you talk there. You talked about GDP growth rate. The European Union's growth rate in the past 5-6 years has been 0.7%. That's not a very good record. The growth rate of the Commonwealth countries has been 5%, huge. They have a GDP of 10.5 trillion. Why are we scared to walk away from a failing monolith? And it is failing. A lot of the countries in the EU are verging on bankruptcy. Italy, Greece.
They're not at all. I've actually been in Portugal recently. I've been in Spain. They're bouncing back. Europe is growing faster than Britain at the moment since Brexit. That is the sad thing.
Well, you say that because the pound has been...
Not because of the pound. It's actually doing better. That's a fact.
I think, a lot of our government ministers, people like Amber Rudd, people like Hammond, have been talking about the problems associated with Brexit. No one has been talking about the positives about leaving the European Union. And there are many, because we are not closing ourselves off from the world. We are opening our doors to the entire world.
We always were open to the world.
No, we were not.
There's another important one, if I may make.
But we were not open to the world.
We say that on the one hand, if we leave the European Union, we can do all these trade deals. We can do all these trade deals. Just very quickly, if I may, very quickly. We can do all these trade trade deals. We already have 50% of our trade with the European Union.
Yeah.
Even though it may be declining, we've got 50% of our trade. Through the European Union, we've got 17% with other countries. That's over 2/3 of our trade. Right. And now Japan has done a free trade deal with EU. So over 70%. So over 70% of our trade. We're going to give that up to go for the rest.
And you think I talk a lot?
I may not have a debating awards.
Our new panelist.
I may not have debating awards from Cambridge University, but I have got the under-11 breaststroke certificate for 25 yards. Let's just... You're redoing the Brexit debate. Yeah. What Carole is talking about is Bravo Boris. That's the headline for this conversation. Now, I know you're going to be talking about, and I'm not dismissing what you say, so let's just focus more on Boris Johnson's intervention. And for me, as a businessman, and I'm going to ask you a question, but I only actually want you to answer it because I'm on a roll now. As a businessman, I would imagine you don't want to do deals on your knees. Exactly. And it seems to me that at the moment, Britain is doing a deal on it, or was attempting to do a deal, and it's not a good place to be. You mentioned Jacob Rees-Mogg. Let's just quickly have a listen to what he had to say about what Boris did.
At last, we're thinking about how we're going to prosper outside the European Union, rather than this poor little blighty approach that everything's so frightfully difficult. There's been too much Eeyore, and we want a bit more red rum. We should probably be given a knighthood for it, certainly not sacked.
The prime stallion that is Jacob Rees-Mogg. So let's focus on the Boris Johnson aspect. Has he achieved something by possibly just putting a bit of wind in the sails? We can have the Brexit debate, and I'm sure we shall. I would say that he probably has.
No, but what I would say is I'm totally in agreement with you there, Karen. If we're going to talk about Boris, the fact is Boris has completely been misleading people. And back to what you were saying about the Office of National Statistics, Sir David Norgrove is my new best friend, may I add. Love this guy. Okay. So straight away, unprompted, this is the letter he said. Dear Foreign Secretary, I'm surprised and disappointed that you have chosen to repeat the figure of £350 million per week in connection with the amount that might be available for extra public spending when we leave the European Union. It is a clear misuse of official statistics.
Okay.
So again,
but nobody knows. Nobody knows that figure.
It's a fact. It's complete misuse.
The amount we would get back would be 200 million a week.
And you know what, Carole?
What I don't understand is why politicians are so keen to hand billions to Brussels, when if we kept that 200 million a week, we could give it to doctors, to nurses,
Carole,
to police.
That's not the issue. The issue is, why are you lying? Why is he lying? Why is he misleading
I don't know. Hang on, let's just say what he said.
Yes, exactly.
Or misleading people.
And then we got
you cannot verify this figure.
No, and then he went back to Sir David and he said, broadly speaking, it is currently in the region of 300. We don't know what it will be.
That's the gross figure.
Because we might have to pay to stay members of the Atomic Agency, various agricultural agencies.
No,
so then we will know. So the broad figure.
But if it's as good as Boris is saying, then why not state the facts? Why not state the stuff that you definitely can verify?
Yes. And
let's get Michelle.
I don't know why they keep talking about this 350 million, and I wish that they wouldn't, because I think that it distracts from... We're all sitting here debating whether or not that 350 million was right or wrong or somewhere in the middle, and I don't like that, because I think that shouldn't be the focus. To your point, Carole, I do think it's nice to see some positivity around Brexit and what it could look like, because I am a believer, and I know you will disagree with me, but I am a believer that actually we've voted for Brexit and now it will happen. And actually, rather than putting so much energy into why it shouldn't, why aren't we coming together using brilliant brains like yours to focus on how amazing the future could be post-Brexit? And I think it's a real shame when so many people are using their intellect, their skills to fight to stay, instead of applying it to what could the future look like going forward.
So here's the reality of it. This decision that was made, and it's not about, Nick, rerunning the referendum. What happened a year ago, 23rd of June? In 4 months, the referendum was announced in February 2016. In 4 months, the British people had to get to know something that was 40 years. I'm still learning. I'm in the thick of it. A year and a half later, they had to decide whether to leave or to stay. 52-40, it's very narrow voting to leave. That's fine, it's a democratic decision to leave. However, here's the big difference. Here's the big difference. It was not leave on what basis. Nobody said leave with a blank sheet of paper. No. Can I just finish what I'm saying? You cannot just leave on any basis. Now, when the time comes, if you respect democracy, because any other election, if you vote somebody in by 50.001%, in 5 years' time, if they've lied to you or deceived you, like Boris has, or if they haven't performed, you throw them out. And you can here, this is our children, our grandchildren's future, and on what basis? So when the time comes, the British people and Parliament will have to have a say. Are you prepared to leave on this basis? Deal or no deal, are you prepared to leave?
You're a very successful businessman. Let's see what Sir James Dyson, who's also a very successful businessman, has to say.
Instead of being tied within Europe, we can now do trade agreements with countries all over the world. And by the way, the Commonwealth countries, who we discarded when we went into Europe, they're great trading nations to be tied with. And you know, India, Australia, Canada, these are very, very wealthy and wonderful trading nations. I think we should just have a clean break. That's my view. A transition is a muddle. So you have to do transitional arrangements and then another one. I mean, just have a clean break. It's not a big deal. The WTO tariff into Europe is 3 or 4%. We already pay it.
You see, this is a man who knows about business. He's saying it's no big deal. We can go to WTO rules and it will be fine. And what Boris, I just want to talk to you about what you said about Boris. You know, you might call him a liar and all the rest of it, and people say he's ambitious. Well, every politician
He's a court jester.
No, he's not a court jester. He's much cleverer than that. That's actually been quite rude about a guy who I think a lot of the public like very much. And every poll that's done, he's the one who's going to come out as the next Prime Minister.
No,
not at all. He's a laughing stock on the world stage.
Not at the moment.
But he's not a laughing.
I hear this from world leaders.
I read something you wrote recently, and you said that...
What world leader has told you Boris Johnson is laughing?
Everyone says
Give me a name.
No, but I just want to follow up this particular point, where you said, you were quoted as saying that the British people made a huge mistake in doing that, because Britain is now a laughing stock on a world stage. Well, if we are, one, I think that's a little bit condescending about the British people, but two, if we are a laughing stock, it's because of the people who are negotiating Brexit. They're weak, they're meek, anything the EU says that we have to do, we're saying yes. And that's why. And Boris is stepping in to say, actually, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to be tougher than that.